everyone, and welcome to our Bible Ponder for today. I just wanted to make a short video to both build on what we've been doing for the last few new videos that we've done, but also look ahead to our transition into a new sort of series. So we've been looking a bit at how Paul has been looked at, the Apostle Paul and his letters have been looked at in sort of a new light in the last few decades as we've been unearthing more and more information about the ancient world. And the more we've learned about the world that Paul was living in and writing his letters in, the better we can understand what he could have meant. So rather than interpreting him through the lens of what we understand the world to be, thousands of years on, 2,000 years on, hundreds of years on from Paul, if we can get in the mindset of those who would have first heard it, we can maybe better understand and closer understand what he's meaning. And so we got to that point through looking at word studies and how to do good word studies and bad word studies. And then we talked about grace and faith and how that can play out and how it played out in the ancient world. And we talked then about how that has implications for the idea of a grace through faith, how we achieve salvation. So it moves us from a kind of historical discussion where we're looking at history and documents and translation and things like that, to then we're talking about the very essence of salvation and how we understand what salvation is. And it took us on an interesting journey to look at that phrase, we are saved through faith in Christ, or the faithfulness of Christ, or whichever one that is, and what the implications are for that. And so what I want to do is kind of springboard from that type of discussion. And so beginning next week, we're going to start looking at a few places where there are some interesting debates going on around certain texts. And we're going to talk about how the implications for those debates have pretty wide importance and implications and ramifications for the way that we do theology and then the way that we live our lives as Christians, and the way that just the average Christian is living their life in the pews today. Throughout the past couple of years in the Bible Ponders, I've definitely hinted at and pointed to a few places where there are little niggles of theology that have wider implications for the world around us. And we've talked about bits in Thessalonians and in other places about how our interpretation of those things and then our interpretation of something like the end times, in quotes, and eschatology, our study of kind of the last things, and how that can impact how we live our lives. It's not just a theological debate that's purely theory or purely for the kind of academic sphere where many people may not hear the debate that's happening, let alone understand the implications. These things do matter. Some debates don't necessarily matter, and I'll maybe point out a few where it's kind of, well, this is up for debate, but whether you fall down on one side isn't really going to make or break anything. But there are a few places where for some people it might just seem like silly arguments or silly debates, but there really actually is a lot at stake for the outcome that you end up with, because it might really change a lot about how you see God and the world and the people around us, and how we see love and friendship and salvation and all of those sorts of things. So that's the kind of stuff I want to begin looking at next week. So I wanted to throw this video up so that I could kind of have it as a bit of a bridge to tie in what we've been talking about to springboard into what we'll be looking at in the future. So thanks for watching and thanks for listening, and do tune in next week as we begin to look at some of those debates. Have a good night.